Your hand is actually shaking over the mouse. $940 million is sitting in an escrow account that has your name attached to it, and you're about to click a button that either closes the biggest acquisition of your life or blows up 11 years of work in one afternoon. Nobody in this room knows that 14 years ago, you didn't have $900, let alone $900 million. You were sleeping on a mattress on the floor of a one-bedroom rental, running numbers on a cracked laptop, trying to figure out if a rundown triplex across town was a deal or a trap. Here's what almost nobody tells you about going from zero to $1 billion in real estate. It isn't one big break. It's 11 specific decisions made in the right order, each one boring enough that nobody would ever put it on a billboard. I'm going to walk you through every single one of them, the actual dollar amounts, the actual mistakes, the exact moment a stranger trusted you with money for the first time. No highlight reel, just the climb. And stay with me until the end, because the decision that took you from 10 million to $1 billion is not the one you'd guess. It's the most boring one on this entire list. Let's start at the bottom. Your name is Marcus. You're 26, working nights at a warehouse, and you've saved $11,000 doing something most people your age weren't doing, not spending it. You find a duplex 2 towns over, built in 1968, ugly, undervalued, owned by a widow who just wants it gone. Asking price, $98,000. You put down $11,000, finance the rest through a local credit union that actually still talks to humans instead of algorithms. The first tenant pays on time for 4 months, then stops answering your calls. You learn how an eviction actually works, not from a course, from a courthouse. It costs you 6 weeks of rent and a lawyer's fee you didn't budget for. But by month 10, both units are rented. Cash flow is $210 a month after everything, and something in you shifts. You're not scared of the spreadsheet anymore. You start reading it like a language instead of a warning label. 18 months later, you find a 12-unit apartment building, $340,000. Your savings cover maybe a third of the down payment. This is the moment that actually separates people who stay small forever from people who don't. You ask someone else for money for the first time. Your old shift supervisor from the warehouse has $40,000 sitting in a savings account earning nothing. You don't pitch him with a slide deck. You sit at his kitchen table and show him the actual numbers: vacancy rate, repair reserve, the return he'll get if you're right, and what happens if you're wrong. He says yes, that $40,000 is the most important money you will ever raise, not because of the amount, but because it proves something. Someone who isn't related to you will bet on your judgment. You structure it simply. He gets a fixed return first. You keep what's left over. You don't know it yet, but you just built your first real fund structure with a kitchen table and a spreadsheet. 3 years in, you own 6 properties across 2 towns, and you hit a wall that has nothing to do with money. It's a calendar problem. You are the leasing agent, the maintenance line, and the bookkeeper, and there are only so many hours before something breaks that you don't catch in time. This is the part nobody puts in a highlight reel. You hire a part-time property manager before you can really afford one, because the alternative is capping your own growth at exactly what one person can personally hold in their head. You also do something that feels unnecessary at the time. You separate every property into its own legal entity. Your accountant tells you it's overkill for 6 buildings. You do it anyway, because you're not building 6 buildings. You're building the skeleton of something that's going to need to hold a lot more weight than 6 buildings eventually can. By year 5, you've raised money from 9 different people, all through the same kitchen table honesty that worked the first time. Nobody has lost $1. That reputation, not your properties, is the actual asset compounding fastest. Somewhere around $30 million in assets, the type of money calling you changes completely. It stops being warehouse supervisors and dentists. A regional family office calls after hearing about you from someone you've never met. They don't care about your story. They ask for 5 years of audited financials, a due diligence questionnaire longer than your first ever business plan, and proof that you can deploy capital at scale without losing discipline. You almost lose this deal because your reporting is still basically a really good spreadsheet. So you spend real money, 6 figures a year, on fund administration software and a compliance review, not because you want to, but because institutional capital simply will not enter a room that looks unprofessional. The day that family office wires their first $8 million, you understand something that changes how you see the entire business. The properties were never the product. The trust was the product. The buildings were just where it lived. Here's the moment I told you about at the beginning. Somewhere past $50 million in assets, Every instinct in you says to keep buying more of what's already working, more apartment buildings, because apartment buildings made you rich. Instead, you do the boring thing. You diversify into industrial warehouses and self-storage in a completely different region, right when your gut is screaming to double down on what you already know. 2 years later, a regional policy change guts rental income across the exact market where most of your apartments sit. Investors in concentrated funds nearby lose a third of their portfolio value in 18 months. Yours barely moves. The warehouses and storage units, the boring diversification nobody wants to talk about on a highlight reel, are the entire reason your fund survives a downturn that kills 3 competitors who never spread the risk. That one unglamorous decision is worth more than every clever deal you ever made combined. Which brings us back to that shaking hand on the mouse. $940 million, a ground-up logistics portfolio. The deal that pushes the fund past $1 billion in assets under management. You click confirm. The wire clears. There's no confetti. Your assistant asks if you want the office to order lunch. You say yes, and you go back to reviewing a lease on a storage facility in a town most people couldn't find on a map. That's genuinely what it looks like. Not a stage, not a check with too many zeros held up for a photo. A grown adult going back to work 40 minutes after the biggest number of his life became real. Every level in this story is the same lesson wearing a bigger number. Raise money like you're going to see that person at Thanksgiving for the rest of your life, because eventually you will. Diversify before you're forced to. Build the boring systems before you need them, not after they've already cost you something. If you want the next one, how the actual fund fees work, and where every dollar in that 70-30 split really goes, subscribe, because that's exactly what we're breaking down next. Drop a comment. What level are you on right now? I read every single one.